I have been a longtime believer that it's just not possible to adjust the world or adjust any given society to allow considerations for every issue of every person out there. There are so many groups and subgroups of people that no one person can ever understand or sympathize with every cause or problem. If anything, I think trying to do that overwhelms people until they give up trying to care at all, because no matter what they do, someone is yelling at them that they're doing or saying something wrong. So sometimes you have to take your situation with a grain of salt and understand that you are different. You are not the norm. Otherwise, you just end up angry with everyone else all the time. And that doesn't hurt them, it hurts you. I know that, I understand that. I try to raise my kids in the same mindset, but all the same, that doesn't make it any easier to watch my high-functioning autistic daughter struggle in the world. But every so often, families like mine get thrown a lifeline, and a heavy hitter in the media steps in with the potential to change things for a lot of kids. This morning, I got to watch the 10-minute introduction of Sesame Street's newest character, Julia. Julia has autism, and I think they've done a really magnificent job of creating a face, as it were, for ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder. If you haven't met Julia yet, SesameStreet.org has the clip I was talking about where Julia first meets Big Bird. When I first started learning about autism, I read a quote that I felt was so perfect. I have no idea who said it anymore, but it was, "If you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism." Autism can be tricky to identify because everyone with autism is a completely unique case. And not everyone with ASD will have the same issues. That's why it's a spectrum. My daughter, for example, has no problem articulating herself. Oftentimes she has too much ease with it and lacks that filter that tells her, hey, that's not a nice thing to say. But you will sometimes see a delay in her responses or a complete refusal to answer you. So I believe that Julia will become a poster child for autism, but it's very important to remember that she can never represent the way every child with autism behaves. Even so, the fact that this has become part of the discussion and a children's programming powerhouse like Sesame Street has taken up the cause, I sincerely think that this will change the way the next generation of kids treat people with autism, and hopefully that will lead to a lot more inclusion and understanding. Julia, as a character with a purpose, is such a game changer. I can't stress that enough. I wish she was here 20 years ago. I feel like Molly Grew going, where were you 10 years ago, 20 years ago? But I'm so thankful to see her now. Watching Julia's behaviors gave me a subtle awe, as I understood both what she was doing and why Big Bird was getting upset, and the autistic behaviors were there without being shown as overly obnoxious or difficult. So Julia wasn't off-putting, she was just different. For example, when Big Bird says hello to Julia, she doesn't acknowledge him. She continues to ignore him when Big Bird reaches out for a handshake. This is often a point where people start to think, oh, what a rude kid. But the issues of fixating on a task and having a delayed response are very, very real. And if you notice, while Julia is verbally limited, so you think of her as being impaired in a way, her painting is actually much more advanced compared to what Elmo and Abby produce. Many people don't know this. Autism is not a retardation. You're not lesser for having autism. It's just an issue where your brain works differently than neurotypical people. That's why Julia bounces when they play tag, because she sees a value in changing the rules that other people might not see. It doesn't mean it's a bad way to play, it's just different. Julia also shows that she has sensory issues. She doesn't want paint on her finger and she seems to find the idea repulsive, so she uses a brush. She also gets overwhelmed when a police siren goes by, and these can be very real and often made fun of responses that someone with autism can have. The hand flapping, the repetitive behaviors, the refusal to do something that she doesn't see a point in. Sesame Street has gone to a lot of research to represent autism effectively without treating it like a disability. Because their presentation of it isn't that they should try to change Julia, it's that the other people should try to change so that they can make Julia fit into their world, so that she can be included as their friend. And that is really beautiful. I'm going to try to get through the rest of this without crying, I swear. I think the part that resonates with me the most is when Big Bird thinks that Julia doesn't like him because she won't really interact with him. But by the end of the clip, we find out that Julia really does like Big Bird. It's just that expressing that and warming up to new people is not really easy for her. I can't even count the number of times where my daughter seemed miserable, and later she talks about that event or person like it's the greatest thing she's ever experienced. I guess the best way to say it is that you just can't tell by the surface, by their expression, how an autistic person feels. And that's such an important part of the message to get across to other kids. Just because an autistic kid isn't showing you something doesn't mean they're not feeling bad that they're being excluded. Julia was such a beautiful experience, and thank you to the entire Jim Henson team for making this happen. Whew. Okay, now since April is Autism Awareness Month, and this is obviously a subject that hits home for me, I'm going to talk more about my daughter because it is hard sometimes, and if no one ever talks about it, then everyone thinks they're alone. So I'm done talking about Julia for now. If you don't want to hear any more, click away now. My daughter Kyrie has appeared in a few of my videos. She's really the reason I started doing Coraline theories. She made the Modica theory, and she's actually present in the Let's Chat Steven Universe video. Kyrie has always been nicknamed the Unstoppable, because when her mind is set to do something, it will happen, period. There's no bargaining, there's no changing her mind. Ever since she was a baby, it's been like that. When she was 3 years old, the preschool teacher at Fort Bliss told me that she felt it was a punishment for her to have my daughter in her class because my daughter did not behave like the other kids. She had problems socializing, she had problems comprehending her letters, there were issues, and the teacher said that it was such an unbearable burden on her that I was asked not to bring back Kyrie after 11 days of being enrolled in that school and having 3 parent-teacher conferences. When Kyrie started public school, and we are in the United States, her teachers, who were all older women, commented that she was lazy, that she was slow, that I needed to take her to the doctor and get her some pills to focus better. I always got this go fix your daughter attitude. In America, the public schools will only educationally identify autism if it affects the child verbally. Having severe issues with writing means nothing. Having severe reading issues means nothing. Having severe social issues means nothing. Even constantly flapping her hands means nothing to the U.S. school system. Oh, but she has the vocabulary of a 14-year-old, so she can't possibly have autism. And so I had a terrible fight for years before I could get any educational assistance. Kyrie's finally gotten a younger, more empathetic and understanding teacher this year though, and I think that's helped a lot to get a more supportive teacher on her side. If you're familiar with more of my videos, I have talked about homeschooling before, and yes, my older teenager does homeschool. Kyrie wants nothing to do with it because no matter how mean the other kids are to her, she still thinks they're her friends. And I know better, she's the unstoppable. If I just say, nope, you're gonna homeschool now, she will shut down and not do anything. But people in general have called her mean, they've called her rude, they've called her stupid, they've called her bad, a brat, they've kicked her out of Girl Scouts. She doesn't get invited to birthday parties, she doesn't get invited to sleepovers, she has no friends. And other parents like to say those things to me or purposefully within earshot of me as if those issues reflect how I've raised her. They never bother to consider that Kyrie might not think in the same terms that they do. I hate it, but I get it. They have no reason to walk a mile in her shoes, so they only see one possible cause to the problem. Because you can't look at someone and see their autism like you can a wheelchair, people jump to conclusions, and that's just how it is. Now, all these problems have been there for a long time, but they never seem to faze Kyrie. Or, at least, they didn't. Now, at age 9, we'll go to the park and she won't even try to play with the other kids her age because she knows they won't even talk to her. Her teacher commented to me that Kyrie won't engage in class, she won't get invested with the other kids, and when I asked Kyrie, she said, "You told me if I want to make more friends, I can't say rude things, and I don't know what rude is." Another time, I asked Kyrie if she wanted to take dance classes again because she always loved it before, and she declined. After asking her why 1,000 times, she finally told me weeks later, "I know I can't keep up with the other kids." And for all the things I've tried, nothing has been able to repair that brokenness, that crack in her armor, and it breaks my heart because I don't know what to do. So if you're another parent out there going through this, you're not by yourself. And I would love it if you are out there, please chime in on the comments because so often I feel like we're isolated. And that's why Julia, to me, is an important thing to talk about. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed enough to like, subscribe, and share this video. I've also got a lot of other videos on my channel that you are fully encouraged to go check out. Plus, you can find me on Facebook at Say Halo Goodbye, which is my gamer tag, or Twitter at _Fanily.